Nick Clegg, is David Cameron a good Prime Minister?
I think this is a good government, and I think the fact that it's a coalition and that we've been able to provide stability and leadership and fix the economy is a really good thing. I personally think the history books will judge us very kindly as a government, and he's the Prime Minister of that government.
And a good one.
Well, it's a good government.
So he's the Prime Minister of a good government.
He is the Prime Minister of a good government, and therefore he's a Prime Minister doing a good job.
Why shouldn't people vote for him again?
Why shouldn't they? Oh, because I think if the Conservatives were to get in on their own, in fact, and I know this even more now than I did before, then there's just no way that they would secure the economic recovery in a fair way. It's just not part of their instincts. The Conservatives, as the name implies, it's what it says on the tin. The Conservative Party likes to conserve the pecking order roughly as it is. They're not that interested in trying to help people kind of get on and get up. They tend to cater for people at the top. They were absolutely adamant about, prioritising tax cuts in income tax system for people at the top. I was adamant about prioritising tax cuts for people at the bottom and the middle. That's a very good example. They went into the...
So are Labour then? So
what?
As are Labour, wanting to prioritise tax cuts for those?
No, actually they're not, funny enough. It was not what they did, of course. It's always worth remembering. The upper rate of tax under Labour was 40p. It's now 45p. And of course it was Labour that presided over this grotesque tax system where if you were a hedge fund manager, you had lower taxes on your shares than your cleaner did on their wages. We've closed that. No, I'm afraid that one of the many myths in British politics is that the Labour Party is fair when it comes to tax. They presided over industrial scale tax avoidance and evasion. They didn't close the loopholes. They let the bankers gorge themselves on bonuses and didn't do anything about it, despite our warnings. And they actually let the top have a lower rate of tax than you've got under this coalition government. So I know that they claim otherwise, but I'm afraid I think the facts point firmly in the other direction.
Has Nigel Farage stolen your place as the politician of conviction?
Not of conviction, but he's certainly kind of the anti-politics politician. Yeah, I think you got the UKIP and the Greens now. So take your pick. You always have this in politics. It's right that you have that. It acts like a sort of safety valve, keeps mainstream politicians on their toes. And at the moment, UKIP and the Greens. It's not, by the way, it's not just here, but across the developed world. You've got people on the right and the left who are kind of acting as kind of mouthpieces for people's widespread frustration about politics.
Yes,
whether it's the Tea Party in America, whether it's Pepe Grillo, the left-wing comedian in Italy, whether it's Mr. Wilders in Holland, whether it's Marine Le Pen in France. You've got a lot of populism on left and right, and the Greens and UKIP in that sense do the same thing. They promise the moon on a stick, but have absolutely no idea how to deliver it. They promise people incredibly simplistic solutions, and I totally understand why that is very attractive to people. But in keeping with populism in all developed democracies, they're peddling a lot of kind of paper thin commitments that they would never be able to actually put into practice.
Were you not anti-establishment once?
Oh, I am anti-establishment now.
Nick Clegg is anti-establishment.
Oh, I'm very anti-establishment. Actually, funny enough, the more I've been in government for 4 years, the more anti-establishment I've become. I mean, just my frustration at the way that Whitehall and Westminster works has actually only increased. I mean, look, I try to just introduce a smidgen of democracy, just a wafer-thin smidgen of democracy, so that you might have a say in who actually are the lawmakers of this country. But no, the establishment didn't like that. I then try to have just a little wafer-thin reform of party funding, so we have a bit more transparency about how the parties are funded. Oh no, the establishment, the Labour and the Conservative Party didn't want that. I try to, make the case for a change in our totally clapped out electoral system.
To which the public overwhelmingly said no.
To which the public did, but the public did with all the vested interests in the press against change, with the Conservative Party against change, with the Labour Party totally bereft of the courage of its convictions. But look, so am I frustrated that politics doesn't change as fast as I would like? You bet, and I've only become more frustrated. You see it every week. You do this pantomime of the Prime Minister's questions. It's a total farce. It's a total farce. People yelling at each other in sort of red-faced, often synthetic fury, not even calling each other by their names, using a language that was last used in the 19th century. It's just no wonder people are turned off by politics. But I don't think, I mean, I can be criticised, no doubt, for many things. I don't think I can be criticised for trying very hard indeed to push for the kind of political reform that I've always believed in and always will believe in.
Has being in government then transformed you from an idealist into a realist?
No, it's made me much more, of course, aware of the kind of meeting point of idealism and practicality. Of course, I personally think, you asked me earlier, anti-establishment. I think the creation of the coalition and the success of the coalition is one of the most anti-establishment things we can do, because it messes up the cosy stitch-up, which is based on this myth that the only way this country can be run is by the blue team and the red team playing sort of pass the parcel with who runs the government.
Chances are you may well again be in coalition, and David Cameron has given that 2017 cast-iron guarantee of an EU referendum. So would you be willing to form part of a coalition government if they provided a choice for the public on remaining in or actually leaving the European Union?
So on the referendum, the interesting thing is, there's no difference. There's no difference actually between the parties on the virtue of having a referendum. I've been banging on about the need of a referendum for years. Absolutely none at all. In fact, I think well before David Cameron got there, I said when there's a referendum held, it should be held on the in or out basis. It's why we protested against the Tories' U-turn and flip-flopping on the Lisbon Treaty some years ago. It was why we campaigned on a referendum. And my position hasn't changed. It is, you have a referendum when the rules of the game change, and when that referendum is held, it's an in-out referendum. So the difference is not, do you think there's a referendum should be held or not? In fact, we've gone even further in this government. With my active support, we've legislated for this. It's that the Conservatives, for reasons you need to ask them, have decided to flip-flop endlessly from this position that we had in the early stages of this Parliament, and have now said, for reasons that have nothing to do with the interests of the country, have only to do with internal party management, that they're going to pluck some arbitrary date out of thin air, which so happens to be why is it 2017?
Well, they've got
why not 2018? Why not 2019?
They've got that, and David Cameron has given that guarantee. So you would, I assume, contribute to that government if given the opportunity, and therefore subscribe to that.
So you've got two commitments to a referendum, you've got two guarantees. My guarantee is that, unlike anyone else before, I have legislated, put in law, the circumstances in which a referendum will take place, and more than that, I've said that a Liberal Democrats in government will make sure that when that trigger is set out in law, the question on the ballot paper will be in or out.
So Cameron can't have that referendum then, if you're, again, working with him next year, if the circumstances don't change in Europe?
Look, on this issue and on so many different issues, the parties will set out different rival positions. What we will do, which is, I think, sort of buried within your question, is between now and the general election, is kind of single out those areas which are a particular priority to us. But I have to be really open with you. Much though I care about Europe, much though I'm known as a pro-European, I actually care more about education, I care more about fair taxes, I care more about giving people a chance to get ahead in life than I do about a referendum. We have a clear position. It is a referendum will happen, the rules change, referendum will happen, it'll be in or out. The Conservatives want to bang on and on and on and on about Europe. I want to bang on and on about creating a stronger economy and a fairer society. That's actually what I think most people want, and that's what we will do.
How are you going to do that? Which of your policies do you know are going to be non-negotiable?
Well, we'll come out, as I say, nearer the man.
We don't know yet.
Well, of course not, because we haven't, no parties yet. No, but I'll give you a clue.
Okay.
And the clue is actually what we've done in the past. So what we have done during this Parliament, probably the biggest thing we've done, by far, I think, which would never have happened without the Liberal Democrats in government, is the single biggest change in the personal income tax system in a generation. We've shifted billions of pounds in the tax system. We've taken over 3 million people on low pay out of pay any income tax. We're giving 24 million people 800 quid back in their tax bills because of us, by raising the point at which you start paying income tax. So that's a clue of how much commitment we attach to going even further in instilling even more fairness in the tax system.
Tough decisions have been the mantra sort of repeated throughout this coalition government. Have those decisions affected you personally?
No, I've never held up Miriam and myself and our family as an example of hardship, because frankly, I am paid extremely well for my work, and Miriam is in a high paid job as well. So I've never sought to try and elevate myself, my family, or our lives as some example. There are so many people who are not as lucky as we are, who have had to really work incredibly hard to make ends meet, who've seen a squeeze on their living standards for a prolonged period of time. And absolutely, I think it would be wholly wrong for me to somehow pretend that I'm in the same boat as that, because I'm not. I'm lucky enough not to be.
Vince Cable has probably caused you more problems over the last year or so than anybody else. Of course, this B-Sky B takeover scandal, Lord Oakshot's plot against you. It was yesterday, wasn't it, that we found out taxpayers lost £1 billion in undervalued Royal Mail shares. So why haven't you sacked him yet?
Well, I'll give you. Take the last point. I mean, Matthew Oakeshott, and he's left. He's left the party, and I've got absolutely nothing to add to him. You get this in parties. You get, particularly if you're a strong leader or you lead in a controversial way. Of course, you have your ranks of critics, and people like him never thought we should go into the coalition. And fine, but he's lost the argument and he's off. On the latter part, in fact, I've always ferociously defended Vince, because I think he's been a really, really good biz Secretary of State, industry Secretary of State. He's done more, I think, for instance, to boost apprenticeships. He's done more to plot a long-term approach to the industrial needs of this country than people who've preceded him. But on the post office, it's a really good example. So he's now basically being accused of not being a soothsayer. But apparently, he was somehow supposed to know what was going to happen to the Royal Mail share price. Now, I have a fair amount of expertise in unfair criticisms of politicians, and that is just it's a deeply unfair accusation to make. The price went from 330 up to, I forget what it is, 619 or something. Right, okay. It's now down to 470 something, isn't it? It's actually declined by 25%. I don't know whether it's going to go back down to 330 or even lower in the coming period. Politicians are not there to make kind of soothsayers predictions about the wild gyrations on the stock market. And it's just, I think it is deeply unfair that particularly the Labour Party have chosen to use a select committee report to land some pretty cheap blows, by the way, based on some wholly inaccurate factual assertions as well, while Vince has actually done something which I think should be recognised. He's got Royal Mail out of the hands of the taxpayers, so the taxpayers not endlessly on the hook to constantly bail it out in the future. He's guaranteed the universal postal provision across the country. He's given thousands of people in the Royal Mail an employment stake in it, and he's been quite open about how he's done that. So I defend Vince.
In your own words, why did you defend that decision to make a pledge and then not keep on tuition fees? Why did you apologise for that? Well,
I apologise for it because obviously a lot of people, quite understandably, felt angry and frustrated because this was a manifesto commitment that we couldn't deliver. And of course I apologise for and will always apologise for anyone feeling that somehow they've been kind of led to expect something which and they feel disappointed.
So you apologise not for going back on it, but for saying you'd do it in the first place?
What I also have been quite open about acknowledging is that we should not have made a commitment on that particular policy, which with the benefit of hindsight, it's very clear we were simply not in a position to deliver. Why is that?
Whose fault was that? Was that your fault, or was it senior researchers? Or?
Oh no, I'm not going to look at it. That's pointless. I'm quite a practical person. I'm going to spend all my time. But can I just explain why? The reason why was, well, firstly, I'm not Prime Minister. We didn't win the general election. We came third in the last general election. Yeah. So obviously, we're not going to deliver the full Liberal Democrat manifesto because we don't have the democratic mandate to do it. But in this particular policy, even though it wasn't on the front page of our manifesto, on your well-thumbed manifesto copy that I know is on your bedside table, where actually...
Under my pillow, but yeah.
Under your pillow, well, even better. The second copy is under your pillow. But we actually had 4 commitments on the front page. It was 10,000 tax allowance, over-delivered, pupil premium, delivered, fixing the economy, being delivered, pushing for political reform, certainly delivered. But nonetheless, it was obviously a kind of well-known policy. The issue which was quite clear to me now, is that neither Labour or the Conservatives were under any circumstances going to allow us to implement our policy, because they agreed with each other more than they agreed with us. Of course, what's one of the many ironies in this whole sorry story is, of course, Labour being completely let off the hook. They now kind of parade themselves as somehow the student's best friend. They introduced fees in the first place. They broke their own promises, then increased fees, and even more ludicrously, they now deny the fact that actually under this new fee system, which Vince Cable and David Willits designed, actually the repayments made by graduates under this new system are lower week in, week out, month in, month out than they were under the Labour system. And of course, what I've been very open about saying is that when you have the two larger parties who are both absolutely adamant that fees not only had to stay but had to go up. Remember, it was the Labour government that commissioned Lord Brown's review, which never mind 9,000, said there should be no upper limit at all on fees. Clearly, with the benefit of hindsight, there was no way that the Liberal Democrats were going to deliver unilaterally a policy where, whether we'd gone into coalition with Labour or coalition with the Conservatives, the result would have been the same. They knew that since they agreed with each other more than they agreed with us, we had nowhere to turn. So, you know, what I've learned from that, and which I think that'll be reflected in our next manifesto, is, you know, we will just stress test in a way that we've never stressed it before, the kind of deliverability of our policies. And so when we say, and you quite rightly pressed me on this, what are the policies that we really will die in the sort of ditch for, I hope that I will be able to say to people, we've learnt our lesson.
Yeah.
Boy, have we learnt our lesson. You know, these are policies which we are absolutely sure that if you elect us and you see us in government, we will deliver.
Every single one.
Well, the ones that we no, of course, no, we can't.
Okay,
it's really important.
I see. So you've got,
we'll have to make it.
You'll prioritise.
Exactly, of course we do, because I'm not going to pretend, unless I become Prime Minister and there's a majority Liberal Democrat government, funnier things have happened. Those are the only circumstances in which our whole manifesto can be implemented. Okay. So of course we need to be clear. As it happens last time, we did put 4 priorities on the front page of our manifesto, didn't include higher education financing, and we have religiously stuck to that front page. Fairer taxes, pupil premium, fixing the economy, pushing for political reform.
Fine.
And that kind of attitude is the attitude that I think you can expect from us next time.
Watch out for the Lib Dems' front page of their manifesto.
And then you can have another copy next to you on your bedside table.
And very finally, Nick Clegg, you're the 4th Liberal Democrat leader that we've interviewed on Chat Politics. Who is going to be the next?
Who's going to be the next? There is such a cornucopia of talent within the Liberal Democrats. I wouldn't even dare suggest.
Jeremy Brown?
Who I wouldn't dare suggest. In fact, I wouldn't blight anyone's chances.
Vince?
Long in the future, when I finally shuffle off this particular political stage, I wouldn't blight anyone's chances by singling anybody out now.
Nobody's written off then.
I'm not going to write anyone off. I'm not going to blight their chances by favouring them either. And most importantly of all, it's not a choice that will need to be made for quite some time yet.
Deputy Prime Minister, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Cheers. Is it true that you've made a cup of tea for David Cameron? No. You've never made a cup of tea for David Cameron?
Of course not.
Have you really not?
I'm not going to make a cup of tea for David Cameron.